I think the feeling in DC right now for fans is that of optimism. I think I give DC sports fans a lot of credit, just like New York, where I'm from. I give them a lot of credit too. They understand time, score, and momentum, not just in terms of the game, but in terms of the ebbs and flows of the years, the decades, the seasons. They see where the franchises are trying to go. So for the Capitals, they have Alexander Ovechkin. He's chasing the all-time scoring record, right? Really, really exciting time. The Wizards are in a we're in a full-on youth movement. We're rebuilding. We're rebuilding through the draft. We're rebuilding with young stars, and we're trying to do it. I think in the same vein, kind of maybe like the Orlando Magic or the Oklahoma City Thunder have done in recent years. We're just a little bit closer to the beginning of that journey.
He is the public address announcer for the Washington Wizards. We have the pleasure in welcoming Mark Fratto onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Justin, thanks for having me on tonight. Cold out here in Annapolis, Maryland, as I'm sure it's cold wherever you might be tonight.
It is frigid in Denver, Colorado. So
I would imagine.
feel you on that one. We are a podcast about basketball culture. And before we delve into your history, because we love talking to everything that surrounds the game of basketball, we love talking to public address announcers. We want to get your favorite or first basketball memory. So take it any way you want it.
Sure. My first basketball memory would probably be playing, in the CYO at St. Mary's in Wapengers Falls, New York. I don't remember much about those days, except I was a enthusiastic participant, if not the most skilled. And I remember feeling a lot of family support. My uncle was my first coach, and I could always hear my mom in the crowd. So, not maybe like Allen Iverson's mom. Maybe they have a lot in common. Eileen Fratto and Mrs. Iverson. You never know.
No, that's true. How did she get involved in terms of being a public address announcer? Because you do other sports besides basketball. So, what's the origin story? I'm always curious because you hear kids growing up, they usually want to play sports or they usually want to be the play-by-play commentator. Public address announcers are really unsung heroes, and I'm curious. Everybody's story is so different.
Well, so when I was growing up in Wapengers Falls, New York, it's about an hour north of New York City, and I went to Catholic school, first grade through 12th grade, and in Catholic school you have the first Friday mass every single month. So first Friday of the month, different classes are in charge of different aspects of the mass of the service. So when it came down to the first grade's turn to be in charge of different aspects of the service, I was selected to be the reader. And then that happened in second grade and third grade and fourth grade. So I first learned my way around the microphone by being a reader in church at the first Friday masses when I was a little kid. When I was in high school, I played on the baseball team and I ran on the cross country team, and I wanted to try out for the JV basketball team. And my baseball teammates told me, no, you stink at basketball. You're a left-handed, you're a point guard who can't go left. And, we have the full court press and all that. You're just turning the ball over. But be our announcer and announce the games like you're the guy that's announcing Michael Jordan, in the old Chicago Stadium. So I said I could do that. So I was a junior in high school. And I was announcing the high school games. So that's how really I began. I went to a school in upstate New York called State University of New York at Geneseo. I decided on the second day of school I wanted to find out who was the announcer for the basketball games. So I went down to the athletic department. I introduced myself. They tried me out on a JV game, and that's how it began. That was my first paid announcer gig. Was as a freshman in college. I went to grad school at the University of Maryland, and I worked in college sports for 15 years full time as a communications person, as sports information director. I was at Maryland for 6 years, then I was at St. John's University in New York for 9. And at both stops, I was able to kind of continue my public address announcing. At Maryland, I was the SID for softball and for field hockey, and I was the announcer for both teams. I would fill in as the internal public address announcer for football games, which meant I wasn't announcing to the stadium, but I was announcing in the press box to all the different reporters. And then I'd always do the external PA, the stadium PA for lacrosse and the spring game in football. So that's how I got used to kind of big stadiums. And then when I went to St. John's, I was the head SID. I had a staff of assistant SIDs and of associate SIDs and of graduate students. So when a graduate student would be in charge of a sport, let's say volleyball or softball, I always assigned myself the announcer job because it would put me within arm's reach if I needed to help. But also, it didn't feel like I was kind of being overbearing or micromanaging, or at least is what I told myself. So I could support my people without interfering too much, without taking away their ability to learn and make mistakes and kind of get that on the job training when they were in grad school. So I like doing that. And then while I was at St. John's, we play a lot of games at Madison Square Garden. While we're recording, St. John's is playing Xavier at Madison Square Garden right now. So we I would be invited to announce games at the Garden. In fact, the first time I got an opportunity to do that, it was in the Coaches versus Cancer Classic, and St. John's was playing. We were on the second night. St. John's was playing Texas because we had lost the first night to Maryland. So my former basketball team that I was fortunate to go to two Final Fours with and was part of the national championship staff in 2002. We played Maryland and St. John's played on the first night, and Maryland won. Michigan State beat Texas. So on the second night, I was kind of milling about on the sideline and kind of the backstage area where St. John's was going to play Texas, and I got grabbed by one of the people that worked at Madison Square Garden, legendary administrator at the Garden named Josephine Trena, and she said, "Our PA guy has laryngitis; he can't go. You always say that you can do this. Can you do it?" So I slid into the chair and I didn't really have time to think. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. And off we went. Kevin Durant was a freshman at Texas. He hung 37 on us. And Anthony Mason Jr., who obviously was Anthony Mason's son, played for St. John's, and he had a shot at the buzzer that kind of hit the side of the rim and that would have beaten Texas. And then Maryland went on to beat Michigan State in the championship. Midway through the game, my coach at Maryland, Gary Williams, comes out of the locker room and he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I had to fill in, coach. I had to step up when I was needed." And he said, "No, you're announcing at Madison Square Garden. This is unbelievable." So we still have a close relationship. My coach at the time, Norm Roberts, is at St. John's. He was at St. John's. Now he's at Kansas. We still keep in touch. I see Tom Izzo every March when Michigan State's in the Final Four. January, February, Izzo, April, as that goes. So still see all those coaches often. So that was my first introduction to the big stage in Madison Square Garden. Was there as a fill-in with no time to think about the gravity of the situation.
So what was the transition like becoming the full-time announcer for the Wizards? What was that origin story?
So it was intimidating. It was daunting. I had, kind of, I retired from being an SID in 2014, and I started my business, Lineker Media, then, which does a couple different things: some streaming of live college and pro sporting events, some voiceover work for the teams that I work with, and for other entities like NBA 2K. And then we also do some media operations and media relations. As I mentioned, I work the Final Four every year, kind of in a media operations role, running the press conferences for the NCAA. And then, of course, live event announcing. So I was trying to go as high and kind of reach as high as I could, in all aspects of the business. And we still are. We're 10 years old at this point, and having a really fun time, doing live sports, whether producing them for TV or streaming, or whether I'm announcing, or whether running those press conferences every March and April. So, my first year in business in 2014, the City Football Club was originated, and we started playing soccer games at Yankee Stadium. And I was lucky enough to get that job announcing soccer as the public address announcer, but also do it in a venue where I grew up rooting for the Yankees, the old Yankee Stadium and then the new Yankee Stadium, a venue where the Yankees won the World Series the first year, opened in 2009. And I was working on the media relations team for the playoffs and for that World Series Game 6 victory. Um, that was cool. And then G League team moved to Westchester, New York, and became the Westchester Knicks. So I got the job announcing, and our company got the job to produce the games. We're actually still producing the games to this day, 11 years later and 10 seasons later. But through the Knicks and through the Garden, I had an opportunity to announce two Knicks games, and then the Wizards came open. And obviously for the Knicks, I was filling in and doing the G League games, but where the Wizards came open in 2019, 2020, before that, a couple weeks before that season began, I saw the advertisement on Teamwork Online, just like a lot of people probably did. And a lot of people probably, find jobs that way. So I applied just like everybody else would. I had contacts and connections that worked for Monumental Sports and Entertainment and worked specifically for the Wizards. That's how that works after a 15-year career to that point in college and pro sports. Of course, you're going to know people, you're going to have met people, you hopefully make good impressions on them. And, but I went through the process just like everybody else. It wasn't, and I've done these before, it wasn't, a multi-step live audition, that results in a live audition and then you get the job or not. I have done those before for the Harlem Globetrotters, for the Brooklyn Nets, and for the New York Mets. But this was a couple weeks before the season. Preseason games were just about to begin when I saw that job posting. So they were in a little bit more of a crunch. But because I knew some people that were there, not the ultimately the decision makers, but people that could at least vouch, they knew that I was capable of doing the job. They knew that whatever idiosyncrasies and psychoses that I had were things that they were willing to deal with, and they could live with. So without a preseason, I jumped right in there in 2019, and our home opener was 159 to 158. The Houston Rockets beat us in 4 quarters. It was the highest scoring game in NBA history, I believe, without going to overtime. James Harden had 59 points. Russell Westbrook was a Rocket at the time. He had a triple-double. And our guy, Bradley Beal, had 46. And John Wall was injured that night. But that was my introduction to my first Wizards game of my first Wizards season. And I thought, wow, if I could handle something like this, I think we can make it. I think we can keep doing it.
What is your philosophy in terms of announcing players on the opposing teams? I'm always very curious in terms of, do you like to treat it kind of pretty downplay just their aura in terms of the superstars on the opposing team, or do you treat them equally? There's different philosophies on this, and I'm just very curious what your take is. A quick timeout from the interview to request a favor. If you love our interviews, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video to hear more interviews from the world of basketball, featuring journalists from SB Nation, ESPN, CBS Sports, and The Athletic. Now, back to the interview.
So in all sports that I announce except for boxing, when I'm doing the visitor, I read the news like Walter Cronkite. You're probably a little young to remember who Walter Cronkite was. I'm probably a little young to remember who Walter Cronkite was. But Walter Cronkite used to read the news on, and the show that he was on was called The News. That was it. So without passion or prejudice, he read the news. And that's how I introduced, and that's how I announce action for the visiting team. In boxing, there's no visitor. In boxing, everybody gets a nice big intro, touch gloves, and we'll see who's still standing when I get back into the ring at the end after the bell rings.
So how's the energy between multiple sports since you have experience announcing many events? Is there a particular favorite? Is there a preference that you have, or each event has its own unique kind of characteristics and things you like about it?
Well, I think each one has its challenges, certainly, but I am beyond blessed and lucky to be doing absolutely what I love to do every single time I leave the house. So there's different things that I like about every single one. When I'm announcing a Washington Wizards game, I'm sitting courtside. I'm watching the best athletes in the world, the best basketball players in the world, run up and down the court, pass by me. Occasionally, we'll have a conversation or something like that. But that's a courtside seat. I mean, that's unbelievable. I've been the Washington Commanders announcer for 2 years now, 2 seasons. And as we record this, we're
Yeah.
in the NFC Championship game. I don't even want to say it out loud, but I will. I mean, that's your one game away from going to the Super Bowl, which is wild. We play in Philadelphia, so I'll be watching that game nervous on my couch like the rest of the fans of the team. Um, Obviously, we've had a great season there this year. I had a great time last year, even when we were 4-13. This year, we're not. This year, we're 14-5. We have, one of the best quarterbacks in all of football, and he's only played, 19 games to this point. We're having a great time, but I always say when I'm there with 65,000 or so seats, I don't feel like an announcer. I feel like Metallica. Like I feel like the band Metallica. When I talk in that microphone, it's thunderous. I mean, it's just an unbelievable feeling. And the fact that we're having success this year is a lot of fun. But like I said, like I loved it last year when we were 4-13. It's just such a great opportunity for me, and it's a lot of fun to do that. And when we do soccer, when I'm doing soccer, it's a Yankee Stadium or it's a City Field. Two venues that I grew up going to. In particular, Yankee Stadium, was a place that I always wanted to be. I wanted to be the shortstop, maybe, but as it turns out, I'm the announcer there for 130 soccer games over the last 10 seasons. As it stands right now, and probably around 20 or 30 at City Field. Best athletes in the world there as well. Andrea Pirlo and Frank Lampard and David Villa and Messi. I got to announce Messi in a draw, this past season. While being on hallowed ground, in my opinion, when I'm at Yankee Stadium, which is pretty unbelievable. And they behind on this shelf over here in my office, I'm fortunate to have 5 championship rings from different teams at Maryland. ACC champions at Maryland in basketball and field hockey, NCAA national champions in basketball. I have a 2019 from the New York Penn League of the Brooklyn Cyclones. I did 13 years of minor league baseball for the Mets on Coney Island, with the ocean in the background and all the rides, including the Cyclone and the Wonder Wheel, kind of you know, um, famous sites there on the Coney Island Boardwalk. But New York City FC got me my most recent was the most recent team that I was lucky enough to be part of a championship squad with. And in 2021, we won Major League Soccer, and there's a ring on the shelf and pictures of me and my the people that I work closely with, up in the press box, and then on the video board as part of the end game entertainment event presentation crew to prove that. So that's, I mean, they've been the biggest winner for me lately. So I mean, that's very cool. And then I love like the glitz and glamour of the big fight night in Vegas or LA or the other places I've been fortunate to announce boxing. You wear the tuxedo, you step into the ring, and I usually wear a fancy jacket, and in the tradition of Michael Buffer and Ginny Lennon and the other greats, get everybody fired up for fight night. So that's also a very, very cool thing. All unique and different experiences. And I still have a couple things on my bucket list that I can't wait to be able to participate in someday. I mentioned I run the press conferences at the Final Four, but if I could announce the Final Four, that would be pretty great. I've done 130 soccer games at Yankee Stadium. I'd love to do a Yankee game at some point. Paul Olden's an amazing announcer. He doesn't miss a lot of games over there since 2009. He took over for Bob Shepard, who's one of the most famous announcers of all time. Are you familiar with Mr. Shepard and his work?
I am not, no.
Well, you ever hear, like even when Derek Jeter, after Mr. Shepard had passed away, Derek Jeter still played his recorded announcement. Reggie Jackson, who's
Oh,
before both of our times, pretty much called him the voice of God. Um, with apologies to you, your audience, and everyone, but he's the shortstop number 2, Derek Jeter. That's Bob Shepard, indistinguishable. Unforgettable. So that's definitely on the list. And then someday I think it would be great to be an NBA All Star, just because among my friends I was the worst basketball player. So it'd be funny if I was named an NBA All Star one year, just for the jokes. I think it would be worth it. It'd be a lot of fun.
no, that'd be amazing. Can you discuss the DC sports culture? A lot of
Sure.
teams have changed names. There's been a lot of transitions. I'm always interested with fan bases. Just how does the fan bases, even now, a multitude of sports there and then other cities, but particularly within the DC area, their connection to the Wizards and also to the Commanders as well. Is there a preference between sports? I noticed with some cities, they support everyone. Some other cities, it's just like one sport's kind of below the other. It just kind of depends. So kind of what's the feeling in DC in terms of this kind of the sports culture and particularly the Wizards as well?
I think the feeling in DC right now for fans is that of optimism. I think I give DC sports fans a lot of credit, just like New York, where I'm from. I give them a lot of credit too. They understand time, score, and momentum, not just in terms of the game, but in terms of the ebbs and flows of the years, the decades, the seasons. They see where the franchises are trying to go. So for the Capitals, they have Alexander Ovechkin. He's chasing the all-time scoring record, right? Really, really exciting time. The Wizards are in a full-on youth movement right now. We're rebuilding. We're rebuilding through the draft. We're rebuilding with young stars, and we're trying to do it. I think in the same vein, kind of maybe like the Orlando Magic or the Oklahoma City Thunder have done in recent years. We're just a little bit closer to the beginning of that journey. Obviously the Commanders, not just the quarterback, not just Jaden Daniels, although he certainly helps, but 30 something new players on a 53 man NFL roster, whole new coaching staff, new ownership. I think the Commanders they're arriving at a faster rate or at a much sooner time, making a bigger impact than anybody expected. I think we were picked to win like 6 or 7 games in the preseason, and now 14, and hopefully on our way to 15 and maybe 16 if you dare to dream here. So I think DC fans understand that. I think they see kind of like the different arcs that we're on. And I think, for the Wizards, I think there's a lot of optimism. I mean, I think you see the young players out there balling. I just read a stat that Bub Carrington is leading all NBA rookies in assists. Uh, Local kid, Baltimore kid, who's now playing for the Wizards. Alex Sarr was the NBA's Rookie of the Month in all of December, and he was the number 2 pick for the Wizards this past draft. And he's from France, and he's finding his way and getting that done. He's one of the top rookies in the league this year. So I think give us a couple of years, give us a couple more drafts and draft picks, and I think the Wizards have a chance to be on their way, just like some of the other teams in DC. But I think that I think the fans appreciate the ebbs and flows, and they're really connected to their teams. I mean, even this year for the Wizards, we had great crowds. We always have great crowds, but we had a great crowd against the Denver Nuggets, and we beat the Denver Nuggets. And the fans that were cheering, they were there to see the Nuggets. You heard them early in the game, but coming down the stretch of the fourth quarter when the Wizards are winning, building a lead, and sustaining that to victory, our fans were still in their seats and they were making noise and they were excited that that we got the win, that we got the dub there. So that's their, they exist, they're there, they're passionate, and they're there to see the Wizards win and to support us during this time of rebuilding with the vision toward more victories down the road.
I want to ask, since DC is in a very unique part of America, the epicenter of politics, and I'm just curious, just in terms of the fan base, is it different than other fan bases in regards to just where DC is located in terms of, a lot of this big news is made there just due to politics? Is that a factor in terms of just the people that attend the games? Like, is that different than the fans that attend Madison Square Garden or any other location? Is there any kind of
Well,
yes, that's or is it non-factor at all?
I think the basketball fans are really smart basketball fans. Like I mentioned, I think they get like kind of the course of game flow, but I think they also kind of get the bigger picture and see what we're trying to do, as a franchise, over the next couple of years, which is good. But certainly in DC, Celebrity Row or whatever is different than like in LA where you might see Jack Nicholson and uh, actors and Hollywood types, and in New York you might see Spike Lee and Ben Stiller and you know uh all the different rappers and artists and stuff like that. In DC, like you do see news personalities and politicians that are either there to support the Wizards or They're there kind of when their constituent teams are in town. For example, almost every game I can look across from where I sit and I see John King from CNN. He does the election night coverage.
Mhm.
He's the guy. He's I have the latest numbers from Maricopa County are coming in right now. And he's going through on the map and all that. And then next to him, you see Brett Baer from Fox News. He's interviewed every president in the last couple cycles. Um, you see, President Obama and President Biden both came to Georgetown game a couple of years ago. Um, I just introduced President Trump and Vice President Vance at the Army Navy game, which is at Northwest Stadium in December. But I always think it's kind of funny, like when the Warriors are in town, like you'll see representatives from California. So like
Oh wow.
I'm walking to the elevator that heads toward the parking garage, and it pops open, and out comes Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time, and she's with family members and staffers and aides, and she says, she goes, "I'm looking for Steph. Where's the visiting locker room?" I said, "Well, Madam Speaker, it's right down here. You go through those doors, you make a left, and then you'll find them." And then somebody goes, "Wait a second, that voice." And I said, "I'm the announcer." So they said, "Would you like to get a picture with the speaker?" And I said, "Well, we are both speakers." So we got our picture taken together. I thought that was a pretty good line. You'll see Colin Alred when the Dallas Mavericks are in town. You'll see Ted Lieu, I think, is from California. So you'll see different kind of representatives from different parts of the country. Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Uh, Recently, and not just that, but not just politicians, but recently I was coming out and I noticed a guy wearing what I thought were batting gloves, and they weren't. They were custom golf FootJoy gloves.
Oh wow.
So I was talking to him. I was like, "Hey, you're wearing the gloves indoors." Well, I'm working TV, for my company or for others, and we're pulling cable or carrying boxes. We wear. I sometimes I wear batting gloves. So I was telling him, I wear batting gloves sometimes. I figured he was maybe part of the TV crew, and he goes, "No, these are actually golf gloves. I wear them when I'm drumming." And when Dave Matthews and I founded the Dave Matthews Band way back in Charlottesville, and I said, "You're Carter Beauford, the drummer for Dave Matthews?" And he goes, "I'm here at all the games, like almost all the time." I was like, I didn't know that. That's amazing." So I think the next time we see him, we're going to hear a little Dave come down from DJ Heat and DJ Jealousy. But I also had kind of what I thought was a funny line to him too. He was like, "Yeah, I'm at games a lot. I hear you all the time. You got an awesome voice. You do a great job." And I said, "As awesome as Dave Matthews?" And he was like, "I don't know about that." But, so you run into different people. But like I said, I think some NBA games people come like kind of like to see other people and be seen. Like sometimes there's that vibe, but I think there's so many true basketball fans in all NBA markets, but and the ones that I know the best, especially, I mean, they're there to watch the basketball and they're smart fans. They're into the games. They're evaluating the basketball decisions and the basketball play. But yeah, our celebrity row looks different than in our town than in some others, understandably.
Oh, that makes sense. Last question for you. What
Sure.
advice would you give a aspiring PA announcer? They might go to a local game, whether that's high school or college, and they want to aspire to walk into your footsteps. Especially nowadays with technology, what will be the best path forward in starting their career?
Sure. I think my path, I started it when I was 18 and I'll be 48 in a couple of weeks here. Um, it's a long path, but a, uh, it's not a path that can't be repeated by somebody else. As I mentioned, I was announcing high school sports when I was in high school. Certainly, that's a great time to get involved if you feel like you have a passion for that, or even you want to see if you're any good at it and try it out. Then I did Division III college. Then I did Olympic sports, and then I did kind of bigger revenue sports and bigger stadiums in college. And then eventually I made it to the pros. And someday, hopefully, when I'm a very very old man, they'll tell me, "Hey, this is going to be your last season doing whichever sport it is." And when I'm retired and I have white hair and a white beard or whatever, then I'll probably be back doing high school sports again. And that's the bell curve that I think a lot of careers, and especially careers like this one, are on. So if you're a young person and you want to get involved being an announcer, whether you're a broadcaster or whether you want to be the voice of a stadium, like I'm fortunate enough to be, um, get involved at whatever level you're at right now, or get in where you fit in. Kind of call all the local high school athletic directors, look at the staff directories for the local colleges in the area, find out who the softball announcer is, who the baseball announcer is, who the soccer announcer is at different places. Sometimes basketball and football programs will have people in place that have been there for decades. Um, and in my case, like sometimes I've replaced people that have been there for decades. But there's always a place to start. There's always, football and basketball we have kind of locked up to have for a while, but yeah, we could use somebody for baseball. We could use somebody for softball or soccer or lacrosse. So, kind of get in where you can fit in. Hit those high school athletic directors, hit those staff directories, find the sports information directors, and kind of keep going. My other piece of advice for anybody that wants to do anything in sports: spend at least one summer in minor league baseball. Minor league baseball gives you an opportunity to see all the different departments that major league teams have, but kind of on a more condensed and compressed level. You'll be able to understand what everybody does, what the function of every office is, why it's critical to team operations. You'll be able to learn everything. And then even if you go into it thinking you might be into like something like marketing, and then you find out that you don't like it, maybe you'll be able to pivot to like ticketing or internal operations or stadium operations or broadcast or something else. Or you might go in like being interested in marketing and fall in love, and that could happen as well. But that's a good way to really find out. That's a good way to really know.
Now, that's great advice. Mark, thank you very much for spending the time with us. Can you please let our audience know where they can find you on social media? And then if you have any other projects you're working on for the upcoming year as well.
Sure. I'm really excited to find out the results of this NFC Championship game. I'm excited to welcome the Wizards. They're on a West Coast swing, and they'll be back next week, which is great. I'm excited about a World Championship fight coming to Anaheim in February. Oscar Duarte against Regis Prograis. That's a boxing event for Golden Boy Boxing that I'm going to announce, which will be fantastic. I'm excited about the Final Four this year, like I always am. And if you want to follow, you can follow my business is Lineker Media on Instagram or Facebook or X. And if you want to see work stuff plus pictures of my kids and more family stuff, then you can follow at Mark Fratto as well.
Mark, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.